In today's world, we keep talking about trade wars, tariffs, and how globalization is slowing down. But let me ask you something. If you had to pick the single biggest driver of globalization in the 20th century, what would you say? The English language? The internet? The rise of multinational corporations? The relatively stable US dollar? Affordable air travel? Which one? Now, I think most people will pick one of the above. But in 2013, The Economist magazine, in an article titled The Humble Hero, wrote that none of these has had as much impact on globalization as a simple metal box. Yes, a box. And today's story is about that box. Hi, welcome back to Stories at Work, a series where I share real stories from across the world that you can use when you want to drive home a business point. Our website, storyworks.in, already has over 100 stories, and we are trying to add one every week. Let's start today's story, which I had heard many years ago from Mark Schenk of Anecdote. Back in 1935, a young man named Malcolm McLean had just finished high school in North Carolina. He wanted to go to college but couldn't afford it. So he bought a used truck, teamed up with his brother and sister, and started a small trucking business called the McLean Trucking Company. The company grew fast, but there was one thing that kept bothering Malcolm. Every time he delivered goods to a port, he had to wait and wait and wait. Dock workers unloaded every crate, every barrel, every sack from his truck by hand, then reloaded them onto ships again, every crate, barrel, sack by hand. A ship could sit in ports for days, sometimes weeks, just loading and unloading. And as is obvious, ships, like any other transportation vehicle, only makes money when it moves. That waste of time and his own waste of time and money drove Malcolm crazy. One day, standing on a dock, Malcolm thought, what if there was a better way? What if I could move an entire truck's cargo in one go without having to go one item at a time? That simple question planted the seed of a revolution. He imagined lifting the entire trailer, or better still, a sealed metal box filled with all the goods, off the truck, onto a ship, and then maybe onto another truck at the other end. Simple idea, but radical for its time. Now, for this idea to work, Malcolm needed ships that could be designed or redesigned to accept containers. So he would need to buy ships. But there was a catch. US laws at that time didn't allow trucking companies to own shipping lines. So in 1955, Malcolm made a bold move. He sold his thriving trucking business, took a $22 million loan, and bought a small shipping line called Pan Atlantic Steamship Company, later known as Sealand. And then he and his engineers converted two old World War II cargo ships to carry sturdy, stackable metal containers, each about 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 8 feet high. Then, on April 26th, 1956, one of those ships, the SS Ideal, set sail from Port New York to Houston carrying 58 containers. That quiet voyage changed the world. Within a decade, ships started being designed to carry containers, and the 20 feet long containers that we know today have become the global standard. Later, 40 feet containers were also designed and accepted. Ports were redesigned, cranes automated, and shipping costs plummeted. Ships that once took weeks in port could now turn around in about a day. Today, there are over 50 million containers, some 20 feet and some 40 feet, moving all across the globe. In fact, the biggest ships carry more than 24,000 TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent cargo at one go. 24,000. Can you imagine? Every one of those boxes traces its lineage back to Malcolm McLean's box. He didn't just make shipping cheaper, He made the global trade possible. He shrunk the world. That is why The Economist magazine, published in 2013, called it the single biggest driver of globalization in the 20th century. What a story. Now, other than this story having interesting information about the humble container and what it did to the world, there are a few other lessons we can take from this story. After all, stories are not unidimensional, there are multiple lessons. Let's take a few of them. First, frustration can breed innovation if the frustration is directed towards a solution. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Malcolm's idea began with sheer annoyance at the waste of time and money. The second lesson is that often a different question to the frustration can lead us to a beautiful solution. Malcolm didn't ask, how do I load each crate, each barrel, or each sack faster? He asked, why do I need to load them individually at all? And finally, when looking for solutions, sometimes it's more useful to think systems and not products. Malcolm's genius wasn't just that metal box, it was connecting trucks, ships, trains into one seamless system. That's the story of a man who saw a problem everyone else had ignored and built the box that moved the world. I hope you enjoyed that story, and if you did, then there are over 100 more on our website, storyworks.in. Thank you for listening. See you next week. Bye for now.